The vocabulary word is reap, reap. Meaning of the word. If we reap something means we gather and enjoy the benefits of it. To reap crops means to cut them and gather them. Example sentences. We reap what we sow, and others close to us reap the results too. It is not easy to reap the harvest of my hard work. If we do not lose heart, we shall reap in due season. The only way to reap the rewards of that is to do well in the playoffs. It is never too late to reap the benefits of exercise. A small amount of effort now can really reap dividends later. Following are some tips surrounding how to reap the health benefits of ginger. For every rupee spent on the new seeds, a farmer can reap up to 5 rupees of crop. The vocabulary word is aloof, aloof. Meaning of the word. If someone is aloof, they are not very friendly, and don't like to spend time with other people. Example sentences. She held herself aloof from the others. Is she aloof and arrogant, or just shy? Many people keep aloof from politics. I find her very aloof and unfriendly. Never stand aloof from the masses. The doctor held himself somewhat aloof from the rest of the ship's crew. In contrast, non-responsive parents are aloof, rejecting, or critical. She stayed aloof while the argument went on around her. The vocabulary word is vintage, vintage. Meaning of the word. It is related to old items of high quality from a previous era. Example sentences. This is vintage comedy at its best. This is a vintage car made in 1917. Creative teens find vintage clothing and alter it to fit their size and style. It'll give your outdoor space a great vintage look. There are some classic songs on the album, but most are of more recent vintage. Only a small minority of the wines are kept for a long time as vintage wines. This really is vintage material, and would be worth the strongest recommendation at any price. It's true, his grandfather had 50 vintage cars. The vocabulary word is incoherent, incoherent. Meaning of the word. If someone is incoherent, they are unable to express clearly or fluently. Example sentences. The man was almost incoherent with fear. His comments were strange and rather incoherent, in my opinion. To the listener, this music is incoherent and formless. She dissolved into incoherent sobs. He was so drunk that he was quite incoherent. But the present, incoherent system does need reform. This article is rather incoherent. He was confused and incoherent, and I didn't get much sense out of him. The vocabulary word is spurious, spurious. Meaning of the word. If something is spurious, then that seems to be genuine, but it is not. Example sentences. He demolished the opposition's spurious arguments. A jury has rejected the spurious claim that the police created evidence. The justification of this chart is entirely spurious. People with normal hearing can produce spurious responses during a hearing test. A great deal of the evidence presented for evolution is completely spurious. He had managed to create the entirely spurious impression that the company was thriving. Do not provide spurious sickness certificates, these prolong the illness. Care must be exercised to prevent thermal strains from introducing spurious outputs. The vocabulary word is contagious, contagious. Meaning of the word. If something is contagious, then it will spread quickly among a group of people. Example sentences. The amazing thing is that his optimism is contagious. The patient is still highly contagious. His enthusiasm was contagious. It's a highly contagious infection. People with contagious diseases should be isolated. He flashed one of his contagious smiles. All contagious disease is infectious, but not all infections are contagious. She has a booming voice and a contagious enthusiasm. The vocabulary word is cynical. Cynical. Meaning of the word. If we describe someone as cynical, then they believe that people are only interested in themselves and always act selfishly. Example sentences. The story depicts the hero as a cynical opportunist. He is cynical about love. The public is cynical about election promises. I'm a little cynical about her motives. It may be overly cynical to suggest two things. I think she takes a rather cynical view of men. You tend to become cynical about the whole thing. He shook his head no, and gave a cynical chuckle. The vocabulary word is boisterous. Boisterous. Meaning of the word. Someone who is boisterous is noisy and stormy, and lacking in restraint or discipline. Example sentences. The boisterous student disrupted his class every day. Some people become loud and boisterous, others become quiet. Most of the children were noisy and boisterous. A large, boisterous crowd poured into the bar, singing and shouting noisily. I felt totally shell-shocked after coping with 5 boisterous children all day. I'm going to stay inside this weekend and avoid the stormy, boisterous weather. The child was very boisterous at home, but was on his best behavior at school. This is a among the people ceremonious, the most boisterous tradition festival of our country. The vocabulary word is astonish. Astonish. Meaning of the word. If something or someone astonishes us, then they surprise us very much. Example sentences. She looked astonished when she heard the news. His capacity for learning languages astonished me. The gigantic creation you're about to see might astonish the most serious cartoon enthusiasts. My news will astonish you. The magician's next trick will astonish you. It would astonish you to see how many words she learns in an hour in this pleasant manner. The new houses have been built with astonishing speed. He was astonished to learn that he'd won the competition. The vocabulary word is eccentric. Eccentric. Meaning of the word. If we say that someone is eccentric, we mean that they behave in an unusual way, and they have the habits or opinions that are different from most of the people. Example sentences. His eccentric behavior lost him his job. It does sound a little eccentric, doesn't it? Most people considered him a harmless eccentric. His actions since that morning have been eccentric and unpredictable. Our neighbor is an eccentric old lady, who has about 25 cats. You also worked with another eccentric genius. His reputation as an eccentric is largely a media construct. Her outfits are an amusingly eccentric mix of colors, patterns, and textures. The vocabulary word is incessant. Incessant. Meaning of the word. An incessant is some activity or process that continues without stopping. Example sentences. Outside the window is the incessant noise of cars and buses. The noise of bombs and guns was incessant. Due to incessant rain, many matches have been cancelled. She is tired of his incessant demands for affection. Quarrels and feuds between tribes became incessant. The incessant noise of the traffic gave us not a moment's peace. The incessant buzzing of helicopters filled the evening sky. With an incessant hum of voices, the crowd advanced to the table. The vocabulary word is contention. Contention. Meaning of the word. Contention is the idea or opinion that are expressed or asserted in an argument or discussion. Example sentences. This is not a time for contention. This contention seems to me to be unjustified. 3 players are in contention to win the title. There is no evidence to support her contention. Such a contention can only be very cautiously admitted. Her main contention is that doctors should do more to encourage healthy eating. Her main contention is that staff should get better training. The examination system has long been a serious bone of contention in this country. The vocabulary word is unequivocal. Unequivocal. Meaning of the word. Unequivocal is something that is clearly defined, and not ambiguous. Example sentences. Your meaning must be unequivocal. The answer to our request was an unequivocal no. Our position on this issue is consistent, unequivocal, and resolute. We were unequivocal in response to the third question. The report's message was unequivocal. This reaffirms the unequivocal position and sincere aspiration of the government. The statement was so unequivocal that it excluded all possible arguments. Yesterday, the message to him was unequivocal: get out. The vocabulary word is pretentious. Pretentious. Meaning of the word. If someone is pretentious, then they claim or behave as if they are important or deserving of merit, but that is not the case. Example sentences. I don't appreciate your pretentious attitude. His response was full of pretentious nonsense. He is a talented but pretentious writer. He was restless with pretentious rhetoric. The girl was either affected or pretentious. I think some people enjoy being pretentious. I had a hard time agreeing with her pretentious point of view. The restaurant is stuffy, pretentious, and ridiculously expensive. The vocabulary word is heinous. Heinous. Meaning of the word. If we describe something as heinous, we mean that it is extremely cruel, evil, or horrible. Example sentences. I do not want to meet that heinous person. Hitler's heinous crimes will never be forgotten. They admitted to the most heinous crimes. Fabricating data is a heinous scientific sin. They are capable of the most heinous acts. The way the crimes were committed were especially heinous during that period in time. Crimes are not bogus simply because they are not heinous. What purpose is served by such senseless and heinous acts?